Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is Jason from Gardening with Jason. I'm glad you decided to join us. Um, Today I figured I would come to you and talk to you all about what drives you to garden. What is your passion for gardening? I must say that my passion for gardening started out at a pretty young age with my mom and my grandmother. They were always doing something in the garden as far as planting flowers. My mom loved her rose bushes. She loved her hostas and her elephant ears. I can remember my mom planting elephant ears on the corner of our yard every summer. I can remember my grandmother planting vegetables out in the front of her small little yard that she had, and having an apple tree and going out to harvest the most sour apples in the world. She would go out and harvest those, and she'd fry them up. So I've come from a pretty good line of gardeners when it comes to gardening in my family. Um, but I must say, I probably didn't really get into gardening myself until I moved up here to Dayton, Ohio area. I dabbled in it a little bit here and there until I had a particular neighbor named Peggy who just decked out her entire back fence line with tons of perennials and annuals, and her back fence line was always so beautiful, and I could see it from my backyard, and I really enjoyed looking at her flowers and her fence line that she had all decked out with with just beautiful flowers all over the place. And I was thinking one day maybe I could do that. Uh, and I gave it a try. I wasn't very good at it. I'm still not very good at it, but I try. I'm a lot better than I used to be, but I still have some difficulty with it. But and I think you always have difficulty in it as a gardener because your perceptions change of what you want to do with your with your garden, as far as what you're growing and different things that you want to attempt to grow that don't necessarily grow real well in your area. But anyways, when I met her, my gardening love took off a little bit more at that point. But my love for gardening really didn't take off until I started doing photography, and I developed a passion for DSLR photography. I use a Canon. Uh, Now I use a Canon 72. I used to use a Canon 7D. But once my passion for photography and my passion for gardening kind of collided together, that's when my passion for gardening really started to grow. I would take hikes, and I love to photograph waterfalls and sunsets, and then I started getting into all the little wildflowers around me: the trillium, the jack of the pulpits, the Virginia bluebells, all those little woodland wildflowers that you'd see when you're out hiking in the woods. So I would get down and photograph all the little details in those, do a macro photography, and I just found a really big love for that type of photography. So I figured, why not grow some of these plants and more in my garden and really work on my gardening, and that way it would bring in birds and bring in pollinators, and I would have an endless supply of things to photograph in my garden. Well, that is my ultimate goal in the garden space that I have on my little 0.22 acre lot that I have, is to just really deck it out with all kinds of shrubs, trees, perennials, even annuals. I'm not a huge annual planter. I'm a bigger uh, planter of perennials than I am annuals, but I'd even plant some annuals every so often, some salvias that I plan on growing this year. Zinnias, I always grow zinnias. I do grow those all the time. They're so easy to do from seed. They I don't really consider those an annual. They're not a big expense like some of your petunias and your begonias and your geraniums and stuff like that. Um, so that's where my gardening passion has really grown, is just trying to mesh those two together, attracting the birds to photograph the birds in my garden, to photograph the various flowers in my garden, to try and look around my garden and find little pockets of windows or pockets of scenes to photograph in my yard. Um, so yeah, I mean, photography. That's my biggest passion that drives me to garden. It's not my only passion. Other reasons I like to garden is I like to try and do something to stay active. I like to get outside. I like to get my hands dirty. It's good for the spirit, good for your mental health, um, and it makes you feel like you've accomplished something. I really like to get out there on nicer days, even in the rain. I've gotten out there before, just because if if I can't get out there for 2 or 3 days, I'm getting very antsy to get out there, and sometimes you just got to get out there, and it's just good. It's just good for your body to get out there, good for your mind, good for your health overall, just to get out there and play in the dirt a little bit. Um, my I do have a little bit of ADHD, so sometimes that can be a hindrance, because sometimes I'm not so patient for things to grow, and then I start overthinking where I have something planted, and I think about moving it, and then I do move it, and then I move it again. So that's probably my downfall with gardening, but it's still a passion of mine. I'm still always thinking about it. I'm still even if I am overthinking some of the sizes of the plants and how big they will get. Um, Sometimes I just got to get out there and go for it. I mean, just put things where I want to put them. And if they get too big, deal with it then. I'll deal with moving it later on or trimming it down to size later on. But like I said, it's those are probably definitely my biggest reasons for my passion of gardening, is just getting out there and being active, and also from a photography standpoint. So I'd like to hear about what drives you to garden. Is it because you like to see the wildlife in your garden? Is it because you like the beautiful flowers? Do you like homegrown vegetables? Is that one of the big reasons for your gardening? Um, I don't do a whole lot of vegetable gardening. I tried the past couple of years to do some raised beds out back, and I just didn't find as much enjoyment out of that as I do flower and shrub gardening. So this year I took out the raised beds. I decided to uh, give myself some extra flower and shrub planting room. Um, and I figured I'll just, whatever vegetables I want to grow, I'll just disperse throughout the flower garden and do it that way. Another passion of mine, I love fried green tomatoes. That was the biggest reason I would grow edible vegetables, edible plants. I would grow them and pick the tomatoes while they were green, just so I could take them in and fry them up. But I do love ripe tomatoes too. I mean, I love to eat them straight from the vine, especially some sun gold tomatoes, or the super sweet 100s. I really like those, and the Brad's Atomic Grape. I love those as well. So those are definitely some of the staples I will definitely still be including in the garden this year, along with all the flowers and the perennials. But I've recently I've come to love photographing hummingbirds. I really like to photograph hummingbirds, and especially as they're flying around the garden and sipping the nectar from the flowers. I really like to see what kind of unique shots I can get of them with different types of flowers. So this year I'm really focusing on the perennials. I'm focusing on doing a lot of hummingbird type plants that look good in photos, as well as are beneficial to the hummingbirds and the bees and the butterflies as well. So I hope you stick around and uh, to see some of the photographs that I get this coming spring and summer throughout my garden. And I plan to share those with you here on YouTube as well as on Instagram as well at Gardening with Jason. If you haven't followed me over on Instagram, give me a follow over there. I'm probably more active on Instagram than I am on YouTube. So I usually only get to make 1 or 2 videos a week if I'm lucky on YouTube. But I do various reels and photos on Instagram as well. So, but yeah, that's my passion for gardening. I mean, that's it. That's what it boils down to. Is um, that's what I love. What I love about it. So yeah, just chime in on the comments. Let me know what your love is about gardening. Why are you passionate? Why do you do it? And I'm going to leave you off here with a few of my photos and a slideshow that I've taken over the years, whether it be hiking out in the woods or gardening or walking through a prairie. All of those photos are going to be included on this slideshow at the end of the video. So I hope you enjoy the slideshow and come back and follow along with my journey. Thanks.